Is anyone else struggling to reconcile with the fact that there's a significant portion of Americans who are just insane? That is a line from a TikTok with nearly 1 million likes. Likes, not views. And it resonated with the way that I felt. Opening Twitter in this day and age will do that to a person. And everywhere I went, people were offering up one solution.
Media literacy.
Media literacy.
It's media literacy, baby.
Media literacy.
Media literacy.
Media literacy.
However, I think what people need to have is media literacy.
Yeah, we don't have media literacy, but why don't we have it? Aside from the obvious systemic issues, this felt like the direct result of the way culture around the internet has changed in the short amount of time we've had it. This feels like the direct result of the algorithm. People threw around media literacy this, media literacy that, but this seems like yet another case of individualism that highlights personal responsibility instead of seeing systemic issues. Hank Green illustrates it perfectly in this clip.
Isn't it so weird that like 2007 we're like goof around on YouTube, and then like 2008 it's like, oh, everybody's having so much fun. 2010 it's like it's a goof times. 2014 goof 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 goof. 2024 it's like the world might end because of this thing.
Yeah.
YouTube calls its algorithm automated word of mouth recommendations, and ew. Look, I love YouTube, clearly, and I like it far more than the other garbage platforms out there, especially compared to the walking carcass of what was once Twitter. But we exist in the algorithms world, and it sucks. And I needed to find out exactly how it created this effect of insanity. A lot of people suggest that others are just stupid. And I refuse to accept this because, yet again, it's in line with diverting real issues to personal responsibilities. Personal responsibilities can't be solved, but systemic issues can. Stupid people have existed forever, but why does the internet only now feel like it's flooded by them? I grew up in a time when the internet was actually spread by real word-of-mouth recommendations, and it felt very different. The internet has gone from fun chaos machine to algorithmically manipulated feeds that are designed not to bring joy, but ad dollars. The reason why I scoff at algorithms being word-of-mouth recommendations is no algorithm is and ever will be word-of-mouth recommendations, and referring to it as such humanizes the algorithm in a weird way by co-opting something inherently human, and it implies that the personalization of content it delivers to you is equivalent to the human practice of exchanging things that delight us. It is not, and it never will be. You might think that I'm blowing this out of proportion, and I am. It's kind of what I do. Hey, my name is Esper, and I talk about things to a depth nobody asked for. And I think the algorithm is ruining media literacy, and I'm going to prove it to you by taking you on the journey I went on. We're here, and we're going to venture out to all of these points. But let's start here. First, we're going to investigate the algorithm. TikTok defines their algorithm right on their website. Recommendations are basically the difference of videos watched from two people who have similar viewing patterns. In this Venn diagram, it's these bits that aren't shaded in. YouTube does something similar. Yes, it's way more complicated than that, but unless you want to spend the remaining runtime of this video discussing my annotated and highlighted copy of deep neural networks for YouTube recommendations, then we're moving on. You do not want me to explain to you how matrix factorization works because I barely understand it. Just know it's like a Venn diagram on crack cocaine. Someone out there with a math degree probably just broke out in hives. Anyway, algorithmically generated social media feeds were fun and enjoyable at first. They know what you like, but once it hones in on your likes, it hones in on your vulnerabilities. A Wall Street Journal study found that on TikTok this can happen in as little as 40 minutes. And do you want to know what it did with that information? It suggested self-harm content to depressed users. The algorithm doesn't have a way to differentiate between true positive and true negative engagement because a lot of the signals for them are the same. It is the age-old saying of the opposite of love isn't hate, it's a low watch time on your YouTube Studios analytics page. People who love or hate content will spend a lot of time on it, comment on it, think about it, and even obsess over it. And I would honestly argue that these platforms don't want you to differentiate between the love and the hate. To really drive home that point, let me tell you about an experience I had that starts with this comment. I'm not strong enough to leave, so I'll just sit here and watch it. After reading a series of their comments, this person was clearly going through something beyond the experience of what my YouTube video was bringing to them. Sure enough, more comments rolled in. Not one or two, but 3 more comments that all hit the character limit on YouTube. Look, it's not uncommon for me to get essays back as a response to my videos, but despite the essay length comments that this person was writing, this wasn't media literacy, this was self-harm. And I think we don't tend to think of social media as harm as often as we should, but the algorithm knows how to push your buttons. And there are influencers who have realized this is a very profitable feature of the algorithm to exploit, whether it's politics or peddling gambling to children. People know that our emotions are the quickest way to exploit us, and these algorithms are happy to put that into use. Even if you are like me, who is an unwilling participant in the way algorithms give people a vehicle towards self-harm. When I used to be a streamer, the best advice I ever got was ban that one guy who's throwing the vibes off in your chat. And I have abided by that advice to this day. But there is no stronger signal to me that people are encouraged to build platforms off of vulnerabilities when it is insanely profitable to do so, and the moderation tools do little to actually curb consumption. Both YouTube and Twitch only limit chatting or commenting functions when banned. YouTube is a shadow ban at that. Twitter monetizes via amount of engagement, which basically made the entire platform engagement and rage bait. It also now allows your profile to be seen by people you've blocked because, after all.
The like most motivating emotion is moral outrage.
And still yet, I felt like my question hadn't been answered. Even if people had been pushed to moral outrage, surely that trick only lasts for so long for most people. Rage is exhausting. But I think that's where social media has presented people with a solution to a problem it created. If you feel morally outraged at the state of the world, then why don't you learn more about what you can do? Brainrot as information overload helped me get closer to the answer. Of course, all types of brain rot are part of this, but informational brain rot camouflages as a useful solution and even as an antidote to moral outrage. It's the first step in problem solving after all. But not when it's in the same place that's providing the outrage. That is merely an enticing trap laid by exploiting the newfound energy that needs somewhere to go. Remember, the algorithm wants to trap you within its ecosystems for as long as it can. Social media is now overwhelmingly a place where the most extreme, controversial, and scroll-stopping things reign supreme, and that's bad. I'm going to sound like a 2009 Instagram quote that's set on a photo with deeply terrible color grading, but sometimes there is a slowness that we must indulge in to fully hear what the world has to tell us and what we have to tell ourselves. And look, I didn't say tolerate, I didn't say suffer through, I said indulge. Because nowadays, because of the scroll, there is no pause. There is no silence between each video, and this, no matter what you consume, is brain rot. I know that term is solely reserved for making fun of younger people, but I disagree. Skibbity, Subway Surfers, Reddit text-to-speech might be the easiest way to justify content consumption because at least you're not watching those videos. But the promise of knowledge without nuance is dangerous because it is always filtered through the lens and biases of the person that's feeding that information to you and through the goals of the social media platform it's on. Informative TikToks that get seen often give you a bite-sized piece of incendiary knowledge that lacks the nuance to be truly helpful because information has to be packaged to its barest form to survive the algorithm. So let's get deep into why the informative side of social media is yet another blight on media literacy. Before we start though, I want to say I do see the value of using social media to disperse information. This is about the pitfalls of the way social media disperses what is important. 2. Remember that social media isn't a neutral participant. They are profit chasers. And lastly, 3, I don't think that this TikTok was made in bad faith, and that is why it is especially important to highlight why we should still be critical of this information. Let's watch in full the TikTok where I got the intro quote from.
Is anyone else struggling to reconcile with the fact that there's a significant portion of Americans who are just insane?
In 2022 and 2023, the National Literacy Institute reported that 54% of U.S. adults have a literacy below 6th grade, meaning that they have a tough time reading and spelling words like flammable, institution, sympathetic, psychology, and also that 47 million Americans, or about 1 in 7, have a reading level below 5th grade and are functionally illiterate, and that 21% of them are illiterate. That's your reasoning, not that they're insane.
Now, let's poke holes in it. Okay, let's break this TikTok down. This TikTok states the National Literacy Institute as its source. I already typed it in, literacy rates 2023, and National Literacy Institute is the first result to pop up. Now, let's look at the information that was stated. So 54% of US adults have a literacy below 6th grade. That's this right here. These are just words that are above a 6th grade reading level. 45 million Americans, reading level below 5th grade, functionally illiterate. Okay, that's that. And 21% of them are illiterate. Okay, all of the information from that TikTok is coming from this one webpage. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to look for sources, citations, references, and there is none. However, there is an unmoderated comment section, but we'll get to that. This is what I'm looking for. So Wikipedia is a secondary source. It makes articles and takes information from primary sources. I would expect something like this. This is the literacy page on Wikipedia. I would be able to click on any of these links and verify the information that is being stated on this article. And that's very, very important. This website does not have it. Look, this information could be correct, but this information is not credible. And the difference between that is that 54% of adults could have a literacy level below 6th grade. However, it's not credible because they've given me no way to verify that sort of information. Yes, I could just verify this information for myself by research. However, what is the point of going to a website like this? You just go to a primary resource and you find that information out for yourself. That is why I would never use a website like this as a reference, as a source, anytime I'm making a video. Again, unmoderated comment section that allows you to post images. Their contact information as just the name of a person at gmail.com. We'll click on the About Us. This is a shop front to sell consulting, to sell coaching, to sell courses. And there is nothing wrong with that inherently, but this is not a source. So this is a twofold problem with that TikTok. One, the source isn't a source at all. And two, the name of the website lulls people in a false sense of credibility.
Hey, it's me. I'm back. The truth of the matter is that research isn't sexy. I sat for about 6 hours doing research trying to figure out what the answer actually is to what is happening to literacy, and it is entirely too complicated for me to include here because I would have to tell you who they used for their research, what their intake survey was like to determine who was eligible for the study, what their methods were, and how they processed their data to get the results. By the time I finished, the plot would have already been lost, and it is that people cannot possibly be looking up everything that they consume. I know this because the amount of research people would have to do versus the amount of content they consume would make it more than a full-time job. The problem with informative, algorithmically generated content is that if an informative TikTok or Twitter thread pops up, it's because that shit got engagement. It says nothing about the credibility of that information. Research and credibility, again, has been added to the ever-existing, growing mental load of existing on the internet. These informative TikToks can be especially harmful with the rise of behaviors that claim to have read an article despite the fact that they only watched a TikTok video about it. While traditional media has plenty of faults, there are no regulations as to what an informative TikTok can be, and people default to saying they read an article because this is a shorthand for this information is credible. It might not be true, but our brain uses shortcuts to understand what is going on. And that is what bias is, by the way. And in this case, article equals credible. And it's telling that people omit TikTok, likely for fear of trivializing what they are saying. But by exploiting this bias, there is now a dispersing of incorrect knowledge that's happening because we are falling victim to our own psychology. Here is another pitfall that we see a lot in social media. Communal reinforcement is a very strong force that acts upon our reasoning when it comes to groups. It's the idea that surely all those people cannot be wrong, therefore this must be true.
And let's be real, there is no regulation as to what an informative TikTok can be. As much as we hate and we clown on mainstream journalism, their mistakes are much costlier for them. And there are people that are upholding them to a certain standard. H-Bomber Guy explains this in a much better way than I can.
In the journalism space, if you tell a lie, there's consequences for that for your career, and like there's often legal ones if you say the wrong thing about the wrong person. And on YouTube, you kind of have that if you're really high profile and you tell an obvious lie about someone who has a lot of money. But otherwise, you can kind of say whatever you want.
And we don't even have time to cover the way bots have exploited this, especially on Twitter. Our worldview is shifted by literal fake engagement. How many of those millions of people that watch that TikTok do you think thought to themselves, It sure is scary how literacy rates are falling while accepting the credibility of this supposed institute implicitly. Different type of literacy, but still quite ironic. And if at any point you caught yourself saying that you were just browsing social media and it's not that serious, I will bet you that you cannot trace back the source of everything you know, so you are now passively allowing someone to implant what could be false ideas into your head. And even if you have fact checked, I bet that you do not have time to thoroughly fact check absolutely everything you have scrolled through. I really don't mean to be alarmist about this, but just the act of consumption creates an entry in your head, whether it be conscious or subconscious. Be careful of who you let have access to your mind if you're not going to be critical of the things that you consume. The people who stand to benefit from this shitty practice relies on you not fact checking them. The fatigue you feel from constant content consumption isn't a coincidence. It's by design, so you don't check anything. Meta has now explicitly announced that they will stop fact checking, and if that's not an insanely pointed admission, then I have no idea what is. At this point, I felt pretty close to the answer, but I still felt like I was missing something big. Vulnerable Media and Brainrot explained things some of the time, but it still didn't make sense to me how people didn't spot the malicious intent from miles and miles away. Again, I simply did not believe that people are just stupid and past the complexity of the crisis we are experiencing now. However, I was stuck on this for months on end because what the actual fuck could be a thing that every human had in common, or at least close to it? It wasn't until I watched Super Eye Patch Wolf's video where they said,
"Other people are not a part of our reality. They are our reality."
In that video, John talks about the Ash conformity experiments, how basically people would willingly answer incorrectly to a question to go along with a group. This made everything make sense. It wasn't that people were stupid or malicious. I mean, they were that sometimes, but this is so widespread and so deeply etched into who we are that it explained the behaviors of the people at large. You see, the algorithm, like I said earlier in this video, groups us into different niches, and our inherent need to belong, paired with the way social media utilizes those groups, with vulnerable media or informational brainrot or both, push us to make these decisions that seem insane from an outside perspective, but ultimately make sense to our brains because of how we are wired. And it's terrifying to what extent this affects us. I'm not going to explain the entire experiment here for the sake of brevity, especially since there are many variants of it, but I will tell you the broad strokes and the results, which is what people usually skip to. The basic concept is, though, will a person go along with what the group says when asked an extremely obvious question? The experiment paired one subject with the actors who in the experimental group would give the incorrect answer and in the control group would give the correct answer. Simple enough, but the results are horrifying. The control group's error is 0.7%, negligible. But within the experimental group, that shot up to 35.7%, which is 51 times more than the control group. And this here is all of the experimental group participants. There was 50 of them. And this blue line right here signifies the divide between these people. These 13 people answered correctly and didn't answer incorrectly at all. You might notice how that is a minority in this experiment. Underneath this line is people who answered at least one of the questions wrong. 74% of the participants, of the subjects, gave an incorrect answer to a very, very simple question because they wanted to go along with what the actors were saying. And I want to talk about this part right here because these 12 people are very, very special in a way that they fucking terrify me. When I read this study, this part genuinely freaked me out. Because, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more later on, but these 12 represent the people who suffered distortion of perception, which means that they didn't realize that the actors were lying to them. They had rewritten their own reality, basically, to deny the fact that they were being lied to. which explains so many things. But I digress. So within this group, there is this subset of 6 people, and these are the people who all gave incorrect answers to everything, which means that to all of these very, very simple, again, keep that 0.7% in your mind, these very, very simple questions, they gave an incorrect answer to everything. It turns out gaslighting, super effective.
To explain this outcome, the study goes on to interview the participants for their reasoning. The research team derives 3 types of distortion from their answer: perception, judgment, action. Perception being a supremely horrifying thing where when they interviewed the subject, they said they hadn't realized the actors were lying. Judgment being mostly a lack of confidence in their own answers, which makes them adopt the group's answer. And action where they didn't doubt their answers but thought it better to conform to the group. All of which are terrifying, but I think perception is the one that is most concerning to me because it also seemed that the more people conformed, the chances became higher that they stopped realizing people were lying to them. It is a positive feedback loop, which honestly explains so many things. Vulnerable media lends itself really well to a distortion of perception. When you are at the height of your emotion or you are at your lowest, whatever answers your emotional pleas often gain your favor. Informational brainrot lends itself well to distortion of judgment. If you lack confidence in what to do, then why not follow the crowd? And these two often go hand in hand with what I'm about to talk about.
What causes distortion of action? Ostracization. This is an incredibly powerful tool that has been used by groups, I imagine, since humans have thought about doing things together. When people can't get you to think they're right or destroy your confidence, they get numbers against you. And social media is infamous for weaponizing groups of people, and it doesn't even feel weaponized. It feels like the exact thing you want to be doing at that very time. The thing with groups is that it has 2 sides, belonging and ostracization. Belonging gives you a sense of security and comfort. It is necessary for our survival. When being alone meant dying, your standards to the company that you keep will probably be lower. But when human beings invented civilization, which meant death is less imminent, there wasn't exactly a patch in our brain to lessen the intensity of things like communal reinforcement, groupthink, and conformity. That's why we're susceptible to having our psychology weaponized against us. See this in 2 ways with the algorithm, in trends and cults of personalities. Influencers often follow trends until they become big enough to become a cult of personality. This is an insanely common practice for forging an influencer. But the unsaid part of this equation is that trends are ultimately decided by how the platform tunes their algorithm. The deprioritization of search in things like the YouTube homepage and TikTok's outright hostility towards search with the For You page is ultimately taking away your agency as to what you consume, so you have to consume what they give you. The diminishment of your ability to search is ultimately a form of censorship. It is an affront to you as the consumer by controlling the information you see, and to the creators who must now conform to trendifying everything to even have a chance at capturing your attention. Have you noticed how YouTube search nowadays just shows you a few results, then gives up and shows you shorts or other videos? This is bad. It's ultimately only rewarding a creator's ability to conform to the bottom line of the algorithm, which is increased watch times at any cost. This is how someone like Logan Paul, despite being already a multi-millionaire, can scam people by offering them the ability to be a part of something he's creating. People lost so much on his CryptoZoo scam.
CryptoZoo.co. It's a really fun game that makes you money.
I lost around $50,000 in CryptoZoo.
I lost $40,000.
$500,000 Australian.
I'm telling you, it's just a picture. There's nothing I could do with it.
Wait, you can't even hatch?
No.
And yet he still has a massive platform. It is genuinely harder to leave because people hang on dearly to belonging to something. People are willing to do a lot for a group that gives them a feel of belonging. Belonging to a group, no matter how crazy it is, can sometimes bring more comfort than the truth. When people have made something their personality, they immediately become more vulnerable to it. Criticisms of their group is now an attack on them, so they watch things that validate them or they feel like proves those dissenting opinions wrong, and they set themselves apart from the people who don't hold the same views. The algorithm is more than happy to set you up within an echo chamber because it helps them recommend videos to you. On the extreme ends of this behavior, social media addiction can very much resemble joining a cult. Without outside perspective, you will begin to be unable to think critically. Before you know it, you have ostracized yourself from everyone who doesn't hold the same views. Your social media niche will become who you are, and now the algorithm knows exactly which videos to serve you. Once you have fallen deep into the rabbit hole, you become a part of the algorithm's recommendation machine as a cog to find others like you, because you've taught the algorithm who it has to look out for to repeat the cycle again and again and again. This is how the algorithm kills media literacy. The different ways of how we feel about the world, media, and each other paired with care is what creates thoughtful conversation, but a concrete determination of an idea will always kill free thought because it neglects other ideas and renders them as opposition. This is often what those people who want to create a cult of personality do. They confidently deliver absolutes unaccompanied by reason and with a promise of something enticing. We mustn't fall for it. An exposure to a large variety of media, those that we like, and especially those that we don't like, and thoughtfully engaging with them is what drives media literacy. It is the differences, after all, that make us interesting and drive new ideas into realizations. If we make ourselves fit in these niches, we are demolishing the most wonderful part of being with others and being ourselves, our unique perspective and thoughts. The internet was once a menagerie of deeply beautiful and weird shit. And it is still sometimes that, because you have personally battled the algorithm for room for this beauty and weirdness. But I think it's becoming harder and harder to experience the internet as a beautiful chaos machine that it once was, that produced Junkrat from Riverdale, because a large part of social media has now become a chore. From Instagram reels that have long descriptions designed to keep you there for repeat plays, comment engagement tactics that gatekeep information, TikToks with incendiary information constantly popping up that exploit the curiosity gap, YouTube Shorts is there too, I guess, Twitter becoming by far the worst by pushing ass, garbage, misinformation, engagement, rage bait that made the site unusable is proof enough that social media has absolutely no respect for you or your time. So when I posed the question I asked at the beginning, once more, I have an answer. Is anyone else struggling to reconcile with the fact that there's a significant portion of Americans who are just insane? And the answer lies here, in an unlikely place.
You think this has nothing to do with you. However, that blue represents millions of dollars and countless jobs. And it's sort of comical how you think that you've made a choice that exempts you from the fashion industry when in fact you're wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the people in this room from a pile of stuff.
As the algorithm chooses for you which videos you see, which comments within those videos you see, and which people you interact with, just remember that the insanity that we feel has been selected for us by the people in those rooms where the goals of the algorithm are decided. So maybe it's time for us to reclaim recommendations as something that we use to connect. If you have someone you think would benefit from this video, or maybe needs some convincing to stop scrolling, send them this video. Thank you for watching. Bye.
Also, look at this. That's double-sided tape and a magnet. Never underestimate what a girl can do with double-sided tape, a printer, and a magnet. Also a cricket.